Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today we're taking a trip back in time to explore one of the most fascinating civilizations in history, the Maya.
A civilization shrouded in mystery and intrigue, that's for sure.
Yeah, and sadly often reduced to that whole 2012 doomsday prophecy thing.
Yes, the pop culture phenomenon that kind of overshadowed the real story of the Maya.
Exactly. So we're here to set the record straight and dive deep into the real deal. We've got a mountain of research here, and it's clear these guys were far more than just calendar makers.
Oh, absolutely. Their story is one of incredible resilience, innovation, and societal complexity that spans thousands of years. It all began with their ancestors embarking on an epic journey, migrating from Siberia, across the Bering Land Bridge, and down to the Yucatan Peninsula.
Wow, that's quite a trek. I mean, I get lost going to the grocery store.
It's hard to imagine, right? But picture this. The Yucatan Peninsula, thousands of years ago, abundant natural resources, fertile land, plentiful fish, obsidian, jade. It was like a prehistoric paradise, ripe for the development of a thriving civilization.
So basically, prime real estate for a budding society.
Precisely. And around 6000 BCE, they figured out how to farm, which, as you know, is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, mastering agriculture seems to be like step one in the civilization starter kit, right? I mean, look at ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley. They all built their empires on a foundation of successful farming.
Exactly. A surplus of food leads to population growth, which then requires more complex social structures to manage everything. It's a classic pattern we see repeated throughout history.
So how did the Maya go from small farming villages to those legendary city-states we picture when we think of their civilization?
Well, around 1700 BCE, they developed pottery. Might not sound like a huge leap forward, but trust me, it's a game changer.
Pottery, how did that revolutionize their society?
Think about it. Pottery allowed them to store and transport goods more efficiently, and that led to, you guessed it, trade. Suddenly, they were connected with groups all across Mexico and Central America, exchanging goods and ideas.
Ah, so pottery equals trade and trade equals...
Is the emergence of an elite class. Trade creates wealth, and wealth often concentrates in the hands of a few. This new elite class began to exert control over resources and, ultimately, over the lower classes.
So this is where we start to see their social hierarchy taking shape.
Exactly. And this pattern eventually led to the formation of chiefdoms, where a central village held sway over surrounding settlements. By 1200 BCE, they're participating in vast regional trade networks, bringing them into contact with other powerful civilizations, like the Olmecs.
Oh yeah, the Olmecs. Weren't they considered the mother culture of Mesoamerica?
They were highly influential, that's for sure, and their influence on the Maya was significant. The Maya adopted elements of Olmec art, urban planning, and religious practices. But they weren't just copying, they were innovating, building upon those ideas and making them their own.
So a dynamic exchange of cultural influences, not just a one-way street.
Exactly. And as their wealth and power grew, those chiefdoms evolved into even more complex entities, proto-states. And whenever you see proto-states popping up in history, you know what usually follows.
Uh-oh, let me guess. Conflict. I mean, it seems like competition for resources and power is a pretty universal theme throughout human history.
You got it. Raiding other groups became a way to acquire wealth, secure labor, and eliminate rivals. It was a high-stakes game of power and control.
So it wasn't just about territorial expansion, but about solidifying their dominance in the region.
Precisely. During this time, the Maya living in the lowlands began to expand inland, pushing the boundaries of their civilization further and further. This expansion led to the rise of several important centers of Mayan civilization.
So the heartland of Mayan influence was starting to solidify?
Yes. By 400 BCE,
Right.
early Mayan states began to emerge in places like Camaljú, El Uyoxte, and perhaps most notably El Mirador.
El Mirador. Now, isn't that where that massive Ladanta pyramid is located? I remember seeing pictures. It's absolutely colossal.
That's the one. La Danta is a testament to the early Maya's architectural genius. It was the largest pyramid in all of ancient Mesoamerica, standing at a towering 236 feet tall.
That puts even some of the Egyptian pyramids to shame. It must have taken incredible skill and ingenuity to construct something on that scale.
It did. The early Maya were masters of engineering and urban planning. But even with all of this success, they weren't immune to challenges, just like any other civilization.
Right, because even in paradise there are bound to be storms. What kind of hurdles did they encounter?
Well, warfare, of course, was a constant. But there were also internal struggles, uprisings, and then you had the environmental factors. Volcanic eruptions, overpopulation, overuse of the soil. All of these things played a role in the decline of some early Mayan civilizations around 150 CE.
A potent reminder that even the most sophisticated societies are vulnerable to the forces of nature and human conflict.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But don't worry, this wasn't the end of the Mayan story. In fact, they were on the verge of entering what historians call their golden age.
Okay, now this is what I've been waiting for. The Maya at the height of their power and brilliance. Tell me everything.
As the influence of the Pacific Coast Maya waned, the spotlight shifted to the lowland Maya. One city in particular rose to prominence during this period, Tikal, located in present-day Guatemala.
Tikal. The name itself evokes images of grand temples and bustling city life.
It truly was a remarkable city, a bustling metropolis home to an estimated 100,000 people at its peak. Its influence extended far beyond its city walls. But as we know, with great power comes great rivalry.
Ooh, tell me more. Who were Tikal's main rivals?
Their primary adversary was another powerful city-state, Calakmul. The rivalry between these two cities dominated the political landscape of the Mayan world for centuries.
So it was a clash of titans, a battle for supremacy in the Mayan world. What was at stake in this conflict?
Control over trade routes, access to valuable resources, and ultimately the right to call the shots in the Mayan world. The wars between Tikal and Calakmul were brutal and drawn out, eventually leading to Tikal's decline.
Ah, so even the mightiest empires can fall. But beyond the battlefield, wasn't this also a time of incredible intellectual and cultural flourishing for the Maya? I mean, this is when they developed their sophisticated calendar system, right?
Absolutely. This was a time of great intellectual and artistic ferment. They made groundbreaking advancements in astronomy, mathematics, and art. They were keen observers of the cosmos, and their understanding of the stars was far beyond anything else in the Americas at that time.
Okay, I have to ask about the Mayan calendar. I know there are a lot of misconceptions out there, especially after that whole 2012 apocalypse thing. What's the real story behind their calendar system?
Well, the Mayan calendar is a complex and fascinating system, but it's not about predicting the end of the world. It's about tracking cycles of time and understanding the interconnectedness of the universe. It's a testament to their intellectual curiosity and their sophisticated understanding of astronomy.
So it's more about cosmic cycles and understanding the natural order of things rather than predicting doomsday scenarios.
Precisely. But even in this golden age, the cycle of rise and fall continued. Around the 9th century CE, both Tikal and Calakmul collapsed. Constant warfare took its toll, draining their resources and leaving them vulnerable to other pressures.
So even amidst all this progress, there were signs of instability.
Unfortunately, yes. The constant cycle of warfare, combined with other factors like environmental degradation and perhaps even climate change, contributed to their decline. It's a reminder that civilizations, like everything else in life, are in a constant state of flux. Change is inevitable, and even the most powerful empires are subject to the forces of history.
So what happened next? Where does the Mayan story go from here?
Well, as the great cities of the southern lowlands declined, the center of power shifted yet again, this time to the Yucatan Peninsula. And during this period, some older pre-classical cities like Chichen Itza re-emerged as major players.
Chichen Itza. Now, there's a name that everyone recognizes. Those iconic pyramids are instantly recognizable. What role did Chichen Itza play in this new chapter of Mayan history?
Well, Chichen Itza's location in the northern Yucatan Peninsula was key to its rise to prominence. It was heavily reliant on maritime trade, which made it a hub for goods and ideas from all over Mesoamerica.
So it was kind of like the New York City of its day, a bustling center of commerce and cultural exchange. What was life like in Chichen Itza during this time?
It was a vibrant and cosmopolitan city, attracting merchants, artisans, and religious pilgrims from far and wide. And what's really fascinating is that this period also saw a shift in their political structure. The traditional hierarchical ruling system with a single all-powerful king began to give way to a more democratic form of governance.
Really? A shift towards democracy way back then. That's pretty remarkable.
It is. It shows you just how dynamic and adaptable Mayan political structures were. But sadly, even Chichen Itza's reign wouldn't last forever. By the mid-11th century, it too began to decline, ravaged by devastating wars.
Ugh, I'm sensing a pattern here. What brought about Chichen Itza's decline? Was it more of those internal power struggles and conflicts with neighboring city-states?
Exactly. Internal strife and conflict with neighboring city-states weakened their position, and eventually they succumbed to those pressures. But even with a more democratic system, they weren't immune to the cycle of conflict that seems to plague so many civilizations.
It makes you wonder, if war hadn't played such a prominent role in their history, How would their civilization have evolved? Would they have achieved even greater things?
That's a question historians continue to debate. But as we know, the Mayan story doesn't end with the decline of Chichen Itza. They were about to face their greatest challenge yet, the arrival of a new force from across the sea, the Spanish conquistadors.
Ah, yes, the arrival of the Spanish. A pivotal moment that would change the course of Mayan history and the history of the Americas forever.
And that's where we'll pick up next time, as we explore the impact of the Spanish conquest and the enduring legacy of the Maya.
Stay tuned, because this deep dive is far from over. Last we left off, the Mayan world was going through some pretty major upheaval, with cities like Chichen Itza rising to prominence. But there were some storm clouds gathering on the horizon, right?
Yeah, there were definitely rumblings of change. While the Maya were grappling with their own internal struggles, a powerful empire was emerging to the north, the Aztecs.
Oh, the Aztecs. Another civilization with a fascinating and often misunderstood history. I'm curious, what was the relationship like between the Maya and the Aztecs during this period? Were they allies, enemies, maybe somewhere in between?
Well, it was complex, as you might imagine. Just like any relationship between powerful empires, there was some trade and cultural exchange, but also a healthy dose of competition for resources and influence.
Right, makes sense. But it's important to remember that the Maya weren't a unified empire, were they? More like a collection of independent city-states, each with its own agenda and ambitions.
Exactly. So even as the Aztecs were consolidating their power to the north, the Maya were still trying to figure out their own internal politics. And then, boom, enter the Spanish. Talk about a game changer.
Yeah, the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors must have thrown a serious wrench into the works. How did this new dynamic impact the relationship between the Maya and the Aztecs?
Well, it really forced them to reevaluate their priorities. Suddenly, both the Maya and the Aztecs were facing a common enemy, a threat unlike anything they had ever encountered before.
You have to imagine that seeing these heavily armed Europeans with their strange weapons and unfamiliar tactics must have been utterly terrifying for the indigenous people.
Oh, absolutely. It would have been a completely alien experience for them. The Spanish had advanced weaponry, horses, which the Maya had never seen before, and a level of ruthlessness that was truly frightening. In fact, the Aztec leader, Montezuma, actually reached out to the Maya, proposing an alliance against the Spanish.
Wow, so even with their own history of rivalry, Montezuma recognized the need to band together in the face of this new threat. Did it work? Did the Maya join forces with the Aztecs to resist the Spanish?
Well, unfortunately, no. Despite Montezuma's best efforts, the Maya weren't able to forge a unified front against the Spanish. Remember, they were a collection of independent city-states, often at odds with each other.
Right. Their history of internal conflicts and power struggles made it difficult for them to present a united front. And I bet the Spanish were more than happy to exploit those divisions, weren't they?
Absolutely. The Spanish were masters of divide and conquer tactics. By 1530, the Maya of the highlands and the Pacific coast had been conquered, but the Maya of the Yucatan Peninsula, they weren't going down without a fight.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. We talked about the Maya's resilience earlier.
Yeah.
How did they resist the Spanish conquest?
Oh, they fought bravely, I'll tell you that. They used their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage, employing guerrilla warfare tactics to harass and ambush the Spanish. They even managed to score some victories against the invaders, holding them off for quite a while.
So they weren't just passively accepting their fate, they were actively defending their homeland, their culture, their way of life.
Precisely. They were determined to protect everything they held dear. But unfortunately, the Spanish just kept sending reinforcements, more soldiers, more weapons.
Right, the sheer force of the Spanish military eventually overwhelmed the Maya's resistance. It's heartbreaking, but their willingness to fight back, even against such overwhelming odds, is truly inspiring. It really speaks to the strength of their spirit. So, what happened after the conquest? What became of the Maya people?
The conquest was absolutely devastating for the Maya people. European diseases like smallpox ripped through their populations. Warfare and forced labor decimated their numbers even further. It's estimated that the Mayan population was reduced by a staggering 90%.
90%. That's almost unimaginable, to lose so much of your population, your culture, your history. It's hard to fathom the scale of that loss. So what happened to those who survived? Did their culture just vanish?
It's incredible, but their culture didn't disappear completely. The surviving Maya were forced into Spanish-style settlements and under immense pressure to convert to Christianity. But even in the face of such hardship, they found ways to hold on to their traditions, their beliefs, their identity. They blended elements of their ancient ways with the new religion imposed upon them.
So it was a fusion of cultures, a way to adapt and survive in this new reality. It's a testament to their resilience and adaptability.
Absolutely. And, the Maya people are still here today. Their culture is vibrant and alive. Their traditions passed down through generations. They continue to face challenges, but their spirit, their resilience, it's truly remarkable.
It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just something in the past, it shapes the present. And the Maya people are a living embodiment of that. We can see their legacy in their descendants, their art, their traditions, and of course, in those incredible archaeological sites that continue to draw visitors from all over the world.
Speaking of those sites, they offer us an incredible window into the past, a glimpse into the lives, the beliefs, the ingenuity of the Maya people.
I can only imagine what it must be like to stand among those ancient ruins, to feel the weight of history all around you.
It's truly awe-inspiring. And, every new discovery made at these sites adds another piece to the puzzle, deepening our understanding of this complex and fascinating civilization. So, we've talked about the broad strokes of Mayan history, their origins, their rise, their struggles, their resilience. But let's zoom in a little, shall we? Let's take a closer look at the intricate details of their society and culture.
I'm all for that. I'm particularly fascinated by their political systems, their social structures, and of course those elaborate religious beliefs.
Well, first of all, we have to remember that there wasn't one single Mayan political system. Different city-states had different structures, which could change over time.
So more like ancient Greece than ancient Rome, a collection of independent city-states with their own unique forms of governance.
Exactly. Some city-states were ruled by kings, others had more council-based systems. For example, Chichen Itza, during the late post-classic period, had a system known as multipal, which involved joint rule by members of the royal family.
Multipal, that's a new one for me. It sounds like a more collaborative approach to leadership as opposed to a single all-powerful ruler. Was that unique to Chichen Itza?
It's a unique term, definitely, and it reflects a more, nuanced approach to power sharing. While there were variations across different city-states, this idea of shared authority with checks and balances wasn't uncommon in Mayan political thought.
That's pretty progressive for a civilization that existed centuries ago. It challenges our modern assumptions about ancient societies being ruled by, all-powerful, tyrannical kings.
Right. The Maya were far more complex than we often give them credit for. Now, in terms of their social structure, it was pretty hierarchical. You had the elite at the top, then a middle class, and then the commoners at the bottom.
The classic pyramid, huh? So who made up each of these groups, and what were the perks and pitfalls of belonging to each level of Mayan society?
Okay, so at the top, you had the elite, which was a pretty small percentage of the population, maybe around 10% or so. This included the ruling families, the high-ranking priests, the powerful warriors, basically the movers and shakers of Mayan society. They lived in the nicest houses, wore the finest clothes, and had access to the best resources.
Sounds like a pretty cushy life, at least for them. What about the middle class? What roles did they play?
The middle class was made up of lower-ranking priests, soldiers, merchants, skilled artisans, the folks who kept Mayan society running smoothly. They weren't living in luxury, but they did enjoy a certain level of comfort and status.
So they were the shopkeepers, the teachers, the craftspeople, the backbone of Mayan society. And then you had the commoners, right? The folks who did the heavy lifting, literally.
Yeah, the commoners made up the vast majority of the population. They were the farmers, the laborers, the builders, the ones who worked the land and built the cities. Their lives were definitely a lot tougher, filled with hard work, and unfortunately not a lot of reward.
Right. It's easy to romanticize ancient civilizations, but the reality is that for most people, life was incredibly difficult, no matter where or when they lived. But even within this hierarchical structure, was there any chance for, upward mobility? Could a commoner climb the social ladder?
Oh, absolutely. There were definitely pathways to advancement, especially through military service or religious devotion. If a commoner distinguished himself on the battlefield or showed exceptional piety and devotion to the gods, he could potentially rise through the ranks.
So it wasn't a completely rigid system. There was at least some hope for a better life. But ultimately, at the very top of this whole structure, you had the king, right?
Right. The king was not only the supreme ruler, but he was considered a divine figure, a living embodiment of the gods. He held immense power and authority.
So like a pharaoh in ancient Egypt, a god king. That's a lot of pressure. What were the expectations for a Mayan king?
Oh, the expectations were huge. He was responsible for maintaining order, ensuring the prosperity of his kingdom, and most importantly, keeping the gods happy. He was the ultimate decision maker, the commander-in-chief of the army, and the spiritual leader of his people.
Sounds like a pretty tough gig. I mean, even a god king couldn't control everything, right? What kinds of challenges did Mayan kings face?
Well, let's see. Rebellions, rivalries with other city-states, droughts, famines, natural disasters. You name it, they probably dealt with it. It wasn't all about enjoying the perks of power. It was about bearing the weight of responsibility for an entire civilization.
I can see how that would be a heavy burden to bear. But they weren't alone in their struggles, were they? They had advisors, priests, and military leaders to support them.
Right, and their belief system played a huge role, too. The Maya believed in the divine right of kings, this idea that the king's authority came directly from the gods. That must have given them a sense of legitimacy and purpose, even in the face of all those challenges.
Speaking of belief systems, that brings us to another fascinating aspect of Mayan culture: their religion. It seems like their religious beliefs permeated every aspect of their lives.
Oh, absolutely. Religion wasn't just some separate sphere for the Maya, it was woven into the very fabric of their existence. They saw the world as a sacred, interconnected web, and their beliefs and rituals were all about maintaining balance and harmony within that web.
And their pantheon of gods was pretty extensive, right? I'm really curious to hear more about their beliefs about the afterlife, their rituals, and especially about those blood sacrifices that they're famous for.
Yeah, the blood sacrifice thing definitely captures people's imaginations, and for good reason. It was a central part of their religious practice, but it's important to understand it within its proper cultural context.
Okay, so let's unpack that. What was the significance of blood sacrifice in Mayan religion? And what about those elaborate rituals they were known for? Let's delve into the fascinating and sometimes mysterious world of Mayan spirituality. All right, so we've explored the rise and fall of empires, those intense power struggles, and even touched on the Mayas' surprisingly progressive political systems. But now, let's dive into the heart of their worldview, their religious beliefs.
And you're right, religion for the Maya wasn't just some Sunday morning thing. It was deeply embedded in every aspect of their lives.
Yeah, last time we left off, you were about to explain the significance of blood sacrifice in Mayan religion. And I know that's something that tends to capture people's imaginations.
It definitely does, and it's easy to view it through a modern lens and think, whoa, that's pretty intense. But for the Maya, blood was sacred, a powerful life force, a vital connection between humans and divine.
So it wasn't about, like, appeasing angry gods or anything like that.
Not exactly. It was more about nourishing the gods, maintaining a reciprocal relationship with them. They believed that by offering their own blood, they were giving back to the gods, ensuring their continued favor and support.
Interesting. So it was seen as a kind of gift, a way to honor the gods and ensure the well-being of the community.
Precisely. And it wasn't just the elites who participated in bloodletting rituals. Commoners also performed acts of self-sacrifice, piercing their tongues or ears, offering their blood as a sign of devotion and piety.
Wow, talk about commitment. But what about human sacrifice? I know that was practiced too, though probably not as frequently.
You're right, human sacrifice was much rarer, reserved for those really important occasions, like the dedication of a major temple or the coronation of a new king.
So a way to really emphasize the gravity of the situation, to make a powerful statement to the gods.
Exactly. It was considered the ultimate offering, a way to demonstrate their deepest reverence and to secure the favor of the gods during times of great need or uncertainty.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, while we're on the topic of the afterlife, what did the Maya believe happened after death? Was it a simple heaven or hell situation, or something more complex?
Oh, much more complex. They believed in an underworld called Xibalba, ruled by the death god Pooch. And Xibalba wasn't just some fire and brimstone kind of place.
So not just a place of punishment for the wicked.
Nope. It was a realm of challenges and transformations, a perilous journey that every soul had to undertake after death. But it wasn't all doom and gloom either. They also believed that souls could potentially be reborn into a new life, starting the cycle anew.
Ah, so even in death, there was the possibility of renewal and rebirth. That's actually a pretty optimistic outlook considering the hardships they faced in life.
It is, and it reflects their cyclical view of time and their belief in the interconnectedness of life and death. And you see this belief reflected in their elaborate burial rituals. Tombs were often filled with offerings to help the deceased on their journey through Xibalba, and their bodies were adorned with jade ornaments, symbolizing the enduring nature of the soul.
It's fascinating how their beliefs about the afterlife were so deeply intertwined with their daily lives and rituals.
Absolutely. And their calendar system, which we touched on earlier, also reflects this cyclical view of time. It wasn't just about tracking the days and months. It was about understanding the vast cycles of creation and disruption, the ebb and flow of cosmic energy.
Right. You mentioned that the Mayan calendar is often misinterpreted, especially that whole 2012 doomsday prophecy thing. Can you clear that up for us? What's the real story behind their calendar?
Well, the Mayan calendar is actually a sophisticated system of interconnected calendars. You have the 260-day ritual calendar, the 365-day solar calendar, and then the famous long count calendar, which tracks time in cycles of over 5,000 years.
Okay, so that 2012 thing was based on a misinterpretation of the long count calendar.
Exactly. The end of a long count cycle didn't mean the end of the world. It signified a new beginning, a time for renewal and transformation, a fresh start.
Wow, so instead of predicting the apocalypse, they were actually celebrating the cyclical nature of time and the possibility of a new era for humanity. That's a pretty powerful message, especially in today's world where we face so many challenges and uncertainties.
It is. And their legacy continues to inspire us, to remind us that even in the face of adversity, there's always hope for renewal and transformation.
Well, I have to say, this has been an incredible journey. From the rise and fall of empires to the intricacies of Mayan religion and cosmology, I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this fascinating civilization.
And that's the beauty of it. There's always more to learn, more to discover, more to ponder. The Maya left behind an incredible legacy, and it's up to us to keep exploring and interpreting their wisdom.
Absolutely. So, to our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep digging, keep asking questions. There's a wealth of knowledge out there just waiting to be discovered. Who knows, maybe you'll even stumble upon a clue that helps us solve some of the remaining mysteries of this amazing civilization.
Keep those minds curious, folks. The world of the ancient Maya is waiting to be explored.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.
There